Hello, it's me.
It's me.
You know, indoctrination started while we were still naive. Programming our beliefs. That inertia is the reason we don't feel the earth spinning. Hello, can you hear me? Did you ever stop to question the confession of gravity as a theory? Funny thing, force alone can be explained with buoyancy and density. The sun is closer than what they've told us, not 90 million miles away. Hello from the inside. I'm here to tell you not to lie. And there never was a space probe, and those planets you flown so wandering stars. Operation Fishbowl. There never was a South Pole. We're surrounded by walls of ice, and we clearly live inside of a glass door. Hello, how are you? Did you get a chance to join Flight Earth and Globe discussion group to discover all the truth? How the sun, the moon, the stars are all revolving around you. There's no more secret. The earth is stationary, it is fixed, unmovable. Hello from the brighter side. They fooled you with that CGI. Sending rockets into the sea, and they're faking ISS field. No matter how high you go,
No matter how high you get.
horizons rise to eye level.
Hey, Jay. Hey, Sue. Good to see you.
Greatest fiction, show you only your glow. God will send
You don't need no globe goggles anymore. Anymore. Over 120 scriptures. Man, this is a good song. I might just back it up a little bit since y'all got in here kind of late. Some really good lyrics. I'm just gonna back it up and then hide full screen it.
I'm here to
Tell you NASA lies.
And there never was a space probe, and those planets you flown so wandering stars. Operation Fishbowl. There never was a South Pole. We're surrounded
By an ice wall.
walls of ice, and we clearly live inside of a glass door. Hello, how are you?
How are you? good people.
Did you get a chance to join Flat Earth and Glow? Discussion grew to discover all the truth. How the sun, the moon, the stars are all revolving around you. There's no more secret. The earth is stationary, it is fixed, unmovable. Hello from the brighter side. They fooled you with the
Brian Stavely is here.
sending rockets
Do-do-do-do.
into the sea, and they're faking their life. ISS feed. No matter how high you go,
No matter how Stavely you get.
horizons rise to eye level. Look out from the world's greatest fiction. Show you won't need.
And it is 421 somewhere, by the way. You don't need your globe goggles anymore, folks. Over 120 scriptures in the Bible supporting flat Earth.
Hiding no shares, promises and gyroscopes. Prove the earth is
Not a globe. It's not a globe.
star trails, but ours to prove we are not the ones on the moon.
Hello. Amber Plaster. Hello, Flat Earth. NASA Lies, Adele cover song by Amber Plaster. Yeah. I like that. Mr. Papaya put that out. Oh, where are we going from here? Back to the beginning? No. All right. Welcome. We've got 8 people. Hey, tuning in one way or another. A few people in the chat. Good to see you guys. And yeah, I got a bunch of, mainly a bunch of videos. You know me, I like to talk over them sometimes too. Give my 2 cents or whatever, my opinion. But yeah, I got some interesting stuff to share with you guys tonight. And I think that song was pretty cool. That was the first time I've heard the whole song before, that one there, that cover. And I wish more people would make Flat Earth songs, including myself. All right, where are we going from here? Let's see. How about we do this? We're going to look at National Geographic put this out in January of last year. It's got over 4 million views, and it's Flat Earth versus Round Earth. And I know I didn't put Flat Earth in the title or the description, but I will add it at some point. I mainly had in there NASA, and I do have quite a bit of NASA stuff too, so don't worry. I'll be around for an hour or 2 or whatever. All right, here we go. So I might get in trouble for playing this since it is National Geographic stuff, but I really don't care at this point. Okay, why don't we have any sound? That's kind of strange.
You'd think that with the beautiful photographs that we have of...
All right. Let's see if we can get
our round blue planet, it would convince any doubters. There are still some who insist that the world is flat. Correspondent Mariana Van Zeller discovers more about this fast-growing movement in California.
That's the famous blue marble that everybody's seen. But let me tell you something. Made in photos. There ain't no photographs, but somebody tell me why. They're all just photographs.
I'm Mariana Van Zeller, and I'm in Southern California to look into a growing movement in America. People who claim the Earth is flat. They call themselves the Flat Earthers, and we're here to try to understand what's behind this unconventional view and how it can affect the rest of us. So what's happening here today? Why are you here?
This matters to me. Flat Earth shows you that you are not a mistake, and you were created, and so you have meaning, and you matter to the world. And we're not monkeys floating through space on a ball as an accident.
It's not testable, it's not measurable, it's not provable, it's not real.
Right. How old are you, Ace? Just out of curiosity?
27.
Do you think it's a growing movement?
Yes. And we're networking, we're getting stronger, people are realizing it, it's coming out in the media, you're hearing the term Flat Earth is becoming more normal, people are more open-minded to it.
He's not wrong. A recent survey of Americans found that 2% believe the Earth is flat. For the U.S. population as a whole, that works out to be over 6.5 million people. Even high-profile artists and athletes are getting on board.
Flat. So I want to try to find Mark Sargent, who's one of the leaders of the Flat Earth community.
Nice to see you, man. Well, we met at Pasadena.
Mark used to design video games and run software trainings. Now he devotes himself full-time to promoting the Flat Earth.
Absolutely.
Hi. See, with all the attention that you must be Mark Sargent.
I am Mark Sargent.
Thanks for meeting us here.
Pleasure to be here.
So tell me, what is this movement all about?
This movement is about changing the world, literally. You think for the longest time that you live here. But what if it wasn't this? What if this was just the illusion? Yeah, we're gonna open this thing up. And the reality looked something like this.
All right, we've all seen this. I realize that. Probably several times. Okay, what do we have here? We believe the Earth is flat. Conspiracies uncovered.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, I want to make an announcement. Has anyone heard the Earth is flat? Well, I just got kicked out of Starbucks for asking NASA employee questions because he's lying. You ever hear about the flat Earth? Did you know what's in the Bible? That the Earth's flat? You can't touch me.
Ah, that's interesting, Brian. Mm-hmm.
One of the first lessons we learn in school is that the Earth is a globe and rotates on an axis and orbits around the sun. But there is an increasingly large community of people who reject this and instead believe that the Earth is flat. BTV wanted to track down the real people behind this emerging internet conspiracy. So we travelled to LA to spend some time with flat earther Nathan Thompson.
Has anyone ever told you the Earth is flat?
I've heard.
Yeah, it's hard. I run a group called the Official Flat Earth and Globe Discussion. Can I get you in there?
Nathan runs the Flat Earth and Globe Discussion Facebook group, which now boasts close to 40,000 members.
At first, I was extremely skeptical. I thought this was the craziest idea I'd ever heard, and I was going to debunk it in 5 minutes. And after about a month of not sleeping and really just digging through the information, I was a flat earther. No one is just completely in the matrix and wakes up to the flat earth. They started out with 9/11, they started out with vaccines, they started out with chemtrails or something, because they're lying to us about a lot of stuff. It's more than just the shape of the earth, you know? We're not dealing with normal people that run the world here. They're psychopaths.
They're evil.
I actually can't believe how popular the group is. I woke up this morning and I have 2,200 members to approve, so the group is just exploding.
We accompanied Nathan while he was out canvassing the streets of Orange County, trying to recruit some new members.
I would say 50% of the time, someone leaves a conversation with me saying, I didn't know any of that information and I'm gonna look into it. And then the other 50% of the time, they just reject it regardless of, you know, what you show them. Yeah, so Earth's flat, man. When you can test it, water is always stationary. Airplanes, when they go to the cruising altitude, they fly stationary. Everyone's coming out about it. All the celebrities, Shaq,
Feel Tequila, B.O.B., Kyrie Irving, they're all talking about it.
Mad Mike Hughes rejected science and chased fame. It killed him.
$50 million
Wow.
a day, $19 billion a year. No. That's crazy. That's a lot of money, you know? So I'm just out here trying to
ridiculous.
I feel like it's my purpose.
Not only do supporters think that the Earth is flat, they also believe that it's surrounded by a heavily policed giant ice wall.
Oh yeah, so it's very easy to circumnavigate.
You really can just fall off.
No. There's an ice wall around and they guard it. So since 1961, they've been guarding the ice wall. And do you know what we started doing in the 60s? Fake space travel. Yeah, of course. Yeah, my pleasure. Right, thank you.
So if the Earth is flat, then why are they lying? Why are they hiding it from us?
The group have also made claims that space exploration is fake and that NASA is a fraudulent organization.
Yes, because it is.
Much of their beliefs instead are based on religious ideologies.
The whole globe Earth model, in my opinion, it wasn't devised by men. It was devised by the devil who wants to deceive everyone. But NASA tells you that stars are billions of light years away. NASA in Hebrew means to deceive. Yep. Now, who speaks Hebrew? There's your answer right there. So you asked me who was behind it, and I think it's pretty obvious once you do the research.
This translation of NASA is popular amongst flat earthers and other conspiracy theorists. However, when we approached a professor of Hebrew at the University of Cambridge, we were given the following translation. So while the root of the verb to deceive is similar, this frequently used translation is in fact incorrect, and NASA in Hebrew actually means to lift.
I'm here today because I was aware that the Flat Earth Society on Facebook was going to meet here. I wanted to meet with some of them and hear from their mouths what their thoughts on the way the Earth is shaped and how the solar system works.
Hey, have you ever heard the Earth is flat?
We invited Spencer Marks of the Independent Investigations Group to come and challenge some of Nathan's views.
The Independent Investigations Group is a rational, scientifically based skeptics organization that investigates claims of the paranormal and fringe science claims. Well, I'm pretty sure that the Earth is a globe. I believe through research, you believe the Antarctica is an ice wall. Is that correct?
True, yeah. I haven't personally been to the ice wall. I've heard people have been turned around at gunpoint for trying to investigate the ice wall independently. I know water doesn't fall off because there's an ice wall on our theory. So, I mean, how about, how does water stick to a ball that spins 1,000 miles an hour?
Gravity.
But gravity is nothing more than a theory.
Because there's got to be some force that keeps us on the ground, right?
Well, yeah, there is. It's called density. So if Earth's moving 1,000 miles an hour around the equator.
But you're moving with it.
So there's no Coriolis.
No, think about being on a train going like 60 miles an hour. Do you feel slammed against the back like this, or do you just move with the train and it doesn't even really feel like it's moving?
But now jump on top of the train and spin the train. I'm open to evidence, and for the first month, all I wanted was Earth to be a globe. And the more research I did, the more I found out, it's just a crazy concept.
Right.
Do you think we went to the moon? I'm just curious.
I know for a fact we went to the moon.
Oh, for a fact.
Yes. 100% of the evidence tells us we went to the moon.
Those astronauts are liars. You could tell before they went to the moon and after they went to the moon, their demeanor had completely changed from someone who's rock star celebrity to someone who's, I'm being told to lie.
Yep.
And basically my life's in danger if they would have came out about it. And I think they killed some of the astronauts. If you look at the number of people who died trying to get in the space program or be an astronaut, it's astronomical.
How does the sun move on the Earth?
Take this and put it right here,
right,
and go around it like this.
Okay, that means the sun wouldn't rise and fall in the east to the west as it does. It would literally go out, and it would.
It kind of does, in my opinion.
I would believe in a flat Earth in a heartbeat if there was actual evidence to support that model of how the Earth and the solar system work.
Look at that flat water out there, you dope.
Because it feels to them like they have special knowledge that other people aren't aware of, and that gives you a sense of purpose and a sense of meaning.
There's no proof of 24 hours.
There's an online video done at McMurdo Station where the guy followed the sun for 24
McMurdo.
hours. It's a scientific station.
Can you Google that, please? Today was awesome. I thought the conversation with Spencer was fairly pleasant. He was open from the beginning to the idea the Earth might be flat, which is key anytime you're in a debate.
if you're looking to determine whether the Earth is flat or round, you don't figure out in your mind that the Earth is, a square or any other shape, and then find confirming evidence. You look at the evidence around you and go in the direction that evidence takes you. In this case,
it's
for thousands of years, we have known that the Earth is round because that's where all of the evidence points to.
Oh, crap. The flat Earth community is the realest group of people you will ever come across. We don't appreciate lies, and we just want to look for the truth.
Yes.
I pray every day
no
they
lies,
torture me.
no NASA deception.
I really think I've got crosshairs on my back. I don't know if it's the CIA or the FBI or whoever's protecting these pedophiles that run the world. All the truth I've discovered, it really set me free.
Oh, now this is going to be. This girl's saying we went through the Van Allen belts. That NASA says they can't go through. But she knows better than NASA.
Challenging me, saying that because of the radiation in the Van Allen belts, we obviously didn't go to the moon, because there's no way we could possibly go through them without dying, and because this one NASA engineer in a video like 4 years ago apparently admitted that we don't have the technology to go through the Van Allen belts. And I've already done a video on this, but apparently it's time for a revisit. So let's do this today on Vintage Space. Okay. So, the Earth has this amazing thing called a magnetic field. Think of it like a lovely protective envelope protecting our planet from all the deadly radiation from deep space and from the sun. Without it, our planet's atmosphere would be stripped away, much like Mars's, and we'd probably all have cancer, but we wouldn't have an environment to actually be living on the planet anymore, so the magnetic field is a very good thing. Unfortunately, that magnetic field also traps the same radiation that it shields us from. James Van Allen first found evidence of radiation at high altitudes near the poles with Raccoon launches in the early 1950s. Follow-up observations from instruments on board the Explorer 1 satellite in February of 1958 allowed him to discover the high radiation environment, the belts that bear his name, which are two distinct donuts that originate at the Earth's poles and loop around the planet. And more recent data from the Van Allen probes found that a third belt can sometimes appear. Immediately after their discovery, it became clear that the Van Allen belts would be problematic for manned missions leaving the planet. Of course, there's a very simple solution to this: just don't go through them and don't leave the planet. If you keep your mission below 345 miles, which is where the inner Van Allen belt starts, you're still within the Earth's protective magnetic field, and you won't have to deal with the issues of radiation in deep space. But then in 1961, President Kennedy said that America was going to land a man on the moon, and that meant flying through the Van Allen belts. You can't go to the moon without going through the belts. So not only were the astronauts going to be exposed to the radiation of deep space, they were also going to have to be exposed to that high radiation environment passing through the Van Allen belts. Van Allen himself came up with a very interesting solution to this problem, and that was to nuke them. Yep. He wanted to nuke the Van Allen belts. He proposed this idea in July of 1962 in an address to the American Rocket Society on the issue of radiation and Apollo. He suggested that detonating a nuclear bomb in the inner belt, which was the more dangerous region for humans in terms of radiation, could actually clear out the radiation. The added material could give the particles extra energy, enough that it would be able to escape the Earth's magnetic field. NASA didn't try this, which is probably a very good thing, because also in July of 1962, the Atomic Energy Commission accidentally almost nuked the Van Allen belts. The fishbowl events under Operation Dominic were designed to see what would happen if a nuclear bomb was detonated in the upper atmosphere. Remember, we're in the Cold War here, and both sides had nuclear bombs, and we're trying to gain as much understanding of what was going to happen in the event of nuclear war as possible. The Starfish Prime event was launched on July 10th of 1962 and saw a 1.4 megaton bomb detonated at an altitude of 250 miles, so a little bit higher than the ISS orbits today and a little bit lower than the inner Van Allen belt. And it added a lot more radiation to that inner belt. Luckily, the added radiation had dissipated by the end of the decade, so Apollo didn't have to deal with the added radiation environment, because that would have been a real problem for crews. NASA knew that it would be launching crews through the Van Allen belts. That was completely unavoidable. So in addition to adding radiation shielding to the spacecraft, especially the main command module where the
now she did mention one NASA scientist that said we couldn't go through the Van Allen belts, but what about the astronauts too that have admitted that they didn't go through the Van Allen belts? They stayed in low orbit. So, she's full of crap.
Crews would be spending most of their time, the agency came up with mission rules. Basically, this was a series of rules dictating what action should be taken if there was a significant solar event during a mission. That's a solar flare that would add significant radiation to the Van Allen belts or just to the space between the Earth and the Moon. The only time a solar event could actually stop a mission was if it hadn't launched yet. There was a mission rule allowing for hold of the launch vehicle on the pad if a significantly large solar flare was detected. Otherwise, the mission rules dictated that you continue on with the flight, but consider the individual case. So if there was a solar flare while the crew was in Earth orbit, there was a mission rule saying maybe hold off on the translunar injection burn for one more orbit, giving the radiation time to dissipate. If there was a solar flare while the crew was around the moon, maybe consider bringing them back earlier. But in every case, the mission rule said just continue the mission. So with radiation shielding in the spacecraft, mission rules in place for dealing with solar flares, and a launch schedule that took advantage of decreased solar activity, NASA sent astronauts through the Van Allen belts to the moon. And in 1973, it released an experience report talking about the radiation and Apollo. The report, entitled Apollo Experience Report, Protection Against Radiation, looks specifically at data from Apollos 7 through 15 and determines that there was absolutely no intensive radiation hitting the crew enough that they would have any adverse effects. And NASA can say that with certainty because the astronauts all wore, and the spacecraft was fitted with, specially designed dosimeters. Each astronaut wore a personal radiation dosimeter in his flight coverall, and also 3 passive dosimeters placed in garments worn throughout the mission. But first, we actually have to look at how radiation is measured, and here's where it gets fun. And by fun, I mean messy. Radiation is measured in a number of different ways. X-rays and gamma rays are less damaging to tissue than neutrons or alpha particles, and there's also a distinction between when radiation just radiates on its own and when it hits human or biological tissue. There's also a difference between the dose emitted and the dose absorbed. If you're right next to an X-ray at, say, 1 rad, you'll absorb more radiation than if you're 10 miles away. And the cherry on the cake is that there is no clear conversion.
You're gonna get that stupid answer. Don't worry, don't go nowhere. SCDHL. I promise you're gonna get that answer in one of these videos that I'm sharing with you. That exact answer you just asked.
Between all the different ways of measuring radiation.
Who filmed?
Here's the chart showing some ways radiation is measured. There are grays, rads, rems, sieverts, becquerels, counts per second, and curies. And they don't totally relate to one another. Not exactly the cleanest conversion table you could hope for, eh? Add to that sieverts are the measurement that is usually used when discussing radiation's effect on human tissue or biological tissue. But of course, NASA published its results using rads. So let's look at another conversion table to kind of put these two things into perspective. A more modern article about radiation from MIT, aka published this century, states that the radiation dose of 500 millisieverts is when you start to get symptoms of radiation poisoning. So let's look at where millisieverts work with rads. Now remember, there's different conversions for different types of radiation.
Too much.
When we're talking about X-rays and gamma rays, 1 rad is equal to 10 millisieverts. For neutrons, 1 rad is anywhere between 50 and 200 millisieverts. For alpha radiation, 1 rad is about 200 millisieverts.
This has 14,000
Okay, so let's simplify this quite a bit because I am neither a physicist nor a radiologist. Let's remember that 500 millisieverts is the dosage where you start to see radiation poisoning. And 1 rad, at the highest conversion from rad to millisieverts that we have on the previous chart I showed, 1 rad is 200 millisieverts. So we can assume by these conversions, remember, I am admitting that they are rough, that 2.5 rads is about 500 millisieverts, aka where you start to see the effects of radiation poisoning. Now let's look at what the astronauts were exposed to. NASA also simplifies its data, taking the average from the 3 astronauts on 1 crew. And as you can see, the highest average radiation dose was on the Apollo 14 mission. The crew averaged 1.14 rads on their flight, through the Van Allen belts to the surface of the moon and back again. And I'm no math whiz, but I do know that 1.4 is less than 2.5. So let's put this into a different perspective so you actually understand how much radiation this is. We're going to use CT scans because they use X-rays. And according to our earlier charts, 1 rad of X-rays...
Okay, we've had enough of you, idiot. Space idiot girl. All righty then, let's get over here. Oh, yes, let's get over here. All right, we'll come back to that. Yeah, this is more on the radiation belts. Here we go.
You can manage
these.
Project or workflow in
sources ban on atmospheric nuclear testing. The U.S. Defense Nuclear Agency rushed to test an audacious new defense capability, man-made radiation belts. Codenamed Operation Argus, the mission was initiated as a deeply classified U.S. Navy-led project to see if the United States could use its nuclear weapons to cast a protective shield around the Earth.
What?
Previous tests had shown that a man-made radiation belt could potentially disable or destroy intercontinental ballistic missile warheads. At least 3 experiments were conducted before the task force was quickly and quietly disbanded. Many records of the test are still missing today. The Christophilus effect. In 1958, Hanson Baldwin discovered a great military secret plan, Operation Argus. The operation sought to detonate nuclear weapons in outer space to interfere with enemy weapons, based on the research of Greek-American nuclear physicist Nicholas Christophilus. The operation was initially called Hardtack Argus, and then Floral, but both of these names were abandoned for simply Argus. It was funded by the Armed Forces Special Weapons Project with a total of $9,023,000. The scientific hypothesis and call for testing behind Operation Argus came from an
Did you catch that number? Man, 9 and 23, 23 especially, I'm seeing all over the place all day long. It's ridiculous, man. But he just said 9 and 23.
Call for testing behind Operation Argus came from an unpublished paper by Christophilus developed at the Lawrence Radiation Observatory. He sought to confirm the self-titled Christophilus effect, which predicted that detonating high-altitude nukes would make a radiation belt covering the atmosphere. It was thought that the radiation could disable missile warheads by entrapping charged particles along magnetic lines of force and damaging the warhead's electronic components. He had hoped that the results would generate a new defense mechanism in case of a nuclear war, giving the United States the option of forming a shell of electrons around Earth as protection. The previous Hardtack Teak test had shown encouraging results when it disrupted radio communications, although in that case it had not been the result of a radiation belt, as in the one Christophilus hoped to generate. Operation Argus was implemented and executed in a quick manner, as a response to the upcoming ban on atmospheric and exoatmospheric testing dictated by the Eisenhower Moratorium. It was also conducted as a direct response to the Sputnik crisis, the public panic that came when the USSR launched the first satellite into space the year before. The plan to detonate atomic weapons in space to create a radiation belt around Earth's magnetic field was carried out in about half a year, a surprisingly small window of time. Due to the rule-breaking nature of the tests, the military had to borrow equipment from the International Geophysical Year to hide what they were doing.
To hide.
Task Force 88. On April 28, 1958,
hey, Dean.
The U.S. Navy created Task Force 88 to carry out Operation Argus. As soon as the operation was over and the reports were written, the task force would be dissolved, and its findings would be kept secret by the Pentagon. Several vessels were involved in the mission. The X-017A missiles were to be launched mainly from the USS Norton Sound. The ship would also serve for training, as most of those conducting the tests were unfamiliar with the missile. Its captain, Arthur A. Gralla, also served as commando for the task force. The Norton Sound also carried a special Air Force Cambridge Research Center radar used to monitor the tests. The USS Tarawa was used as an overall command ship, carrying an MSQ-1A radar aboard for tracking the missile. The VS-32 aircraft on board were used for observation and photography of the operation. Several other ships served as a weather front line, making way for the Tawara, also carrying out the safety precautions of a destroyer escort. These were the USS Warrington, Bierce, Hammerberg, and Courtney. The USS Neosho was sent along to the southern hemisphere to refuel the vessels and offer logistics services, such as radar and communication equipment. Finally, the USS Albemarle was a surprise addition that the task force had not asked for. The ship was sent to the Atlantic Ocean for an alleged shakedown after being overhauled. It mostly carried impressive recording instruments with which the effect of the tests were recorded at a conjugate point in the northern hemisphere, around the Alaskan Azore archipelago. Operation Argus. Extensive preparation for Operation Argus had to happen swiftly and in secret. The East Coast unit of Task Force 88 had to conduct drills using high-altitude anti-aircraft rockets while on their way to the South Atlantic on the USS Warrington. A total of 14 drills were carried out between August 12th and 22nd to test procedures and train the members of the task force within their individual assignments.
22nd.
Among them, as stated in the Operation Argus 1958 report released by the DoD, was the, quote, stationing of ships, MSQ-1A radar tracking by the USS Neosho and the USS Tarawa, communications, positioning of sky camera S-2F aircraft, and area surveillance S-2F aircraft. In order to capture the results of the operation, 2 satellites were launched into space. The first was Explorer 4, launched in July of 1958, under the guise of belonging to the International Geophysical Year, a multinational effort to explore and study Earth from space together. Physicist James Van Allen, who was in charge of the satellite's construction, was fully aware of the satellite's real goal. Explorer 4 successfully went into space aboard an Army Jupiter C missile on July 26th. It only carried enough battery to work for 60 days, leaving little room for unforeseen changes or mistakes. The other satellite meant to capture the results of the blast was Explorer 5, which failed to launch on August 24th. The operation moved ahead without it. Aside from the satellite tracking system, Task Force 88 used technology and resources from multiple other organizations to record the results of the experiment. The Naval Research Laboratory, the Smithsonian, the Army Map Service and Signal Research and Development Laboratory, and the Ballistic Research Laboratory. One of the most crucial elements of the operation was choosing a test site. To fully observe the effect of radiation stuck in Earth's magnetic field, the United States needed an optimal position. It was established that the test had to be conducted between 35 and 55 degrees away from the equator. Furthermore, the missile's altitude limit meant that the tests had to be held in the southern hemisphere so that it could reach the global magnetic field. Due to the off-center position of the magnetic field, it's closer to the surface in the southern hemisphere, only 400 miles above. 3 tests.
Test these.
The shots of Operation Argus were top-secret clandestine experiments. Task Force 88 traveled to the South Atlantic, setting on remote waters 1,100 miles away from Cape Town. 3 high-altitude tests were conducted using the W-25 1.7 kiloton warhead to analyze how the radioactive isotopes and charged particles trapped within the Earth's magnetic field would react. Among the goals were to see whether they would interfere with electronics, communications, and radars. These warheads, developed originally for the air-to-air rocket Genie, were very light and relatively small, making it easy to handle and easier to shoot into space. Launching to the highest altitude possible was partially done to reduce the crew's exposure to ionizing radiation. The 3 missiles used for the tests were modified Lockheed X-17A 3-stage missiles and were shot from the USS Norton Sound. The few released records indicate that the Argus explosion succeeded in creating artificial electron belts due to beta decay. Beta decay occurs when a fast, energetic electron is emitted from an atomic nucleus and turns the nuclide into fission fragments. The belts did not disperse soon after the tests, but instead remained for weeks, affecting radio and radar transmissions as hypothesized by Christopoulos. The tests served not only for military defense purposes, but also furthered nuclear physics immensely by proving the Christopoulos effect. The greatest scientific experiment ever conducted. The promise of the Christopoulos effect had been put to the test. The United States hoped that the results would lead to a new method of deterrence, a plan to put out an enemy attack before it reached its intended target. However, while the tests confirmed the Christopoulos hypothesis, they failed to produce an effect sufficient to reliably damage an incoming nuclear warhead. On the other hand, the tests did prove that nuclear weapons could be used to create an effect that would disable satellites or disrupt radio communications, including blacking out radars. Christopoulos himself responded to the tests, stating, quote, "For the first time, an experiment was conducted in outer space on a global scale, where all the measured quantities were related to a known cause, namely to the trapping in the Earth's field of a known number of electrons of a known energy, injected at a known location at a known time." For carrying out the tests successfully, Task Force Commander Captain Arthur R. Gralla was given the Legion of Merit. The Department of Defense was working on declassifying parts of Operation Argus when a New York Times reporter, Hanson Baldwin, contacted them to let them know the Times would be publishing an article on the tests. Conversations had been ongoing between the Department of Defense and the New York Times to stall the story for as long as possible, so that the U.S. government could control the narrative. The New York Times was facing pressure too, as other news articles caught whiffs or hints of the secret tests and threatened to break the news, albeit with less complete and accurate information. The source of the leak is unclear. The DoD failed to indefinitely stall the release of the story, but continued to exert as much control as possible over what exactly got released. When the news broke in March of 1959, it was headlined the greatest scientific experiment ever conducted. Although the operation was announced and the article published, the complete results of the tests were only declassified in April of 1982. Interestingly, some of the records from Task Force 88 have remained secret, not because the US has kept them classified, but because they have been lost or destroyed since. Notably, footage of the radiation levels during the test has allegedly been lost, a fact that has not gone unnoticed by the Veterans Administration, which recorded a high number of leukemia claims among those involved. Missing and destroyed documentation has made it difficult for an accurate assessment of radiation exposure.
All right, that was that. Operation Argus. And we're going to come back to that. And we're probably going to come back to that. Oh, yeah, we got to watch this real quick because it's only 1:39. I know y'all all know this, but yeah, this is definitely true.
Shuttle Challenger exploded about 74 seconds after takeoff, killing all 7 astronauts inside.
Oh, crap.
Or did it? It turns out that 6 of the 7 are still alive and kicking today.
Yep.
Ellison Onizuka claims to be his identical twin brother, Claude.
Oh, crap.
Yeah, I've got an identical twin brother, Claude, too. The Challenger pilot, Mickey Smith, hasn't even bothered changing his name.
Right.
He's now Professor Michael J. Smith of University of Wisconsin. Now, Krista McAuliffe was a bit of a sneaky one. She was the Challenger payload specialist, quite famous for being a teacher. It turns out during her astronaut days, she was using her middle name, Krista. And now she goes by her first name, Sharon. And she's a Syracuse law professor. The Challenger commander, Francis Richard Scobie, is now Dick Scobie, which sounds like a rather unpleasant disease, CEO of Cows in Trees Limited. Judith Resnick, the Challenger mission specialist, again hasn't even bothered changing her name. She's a professor at Yale Law.
Yep.
And finally, Ronald McNair, another Challenger mission specialist, claims to be his identical twin brother.
Again, twins. My
what are the odds?
Ass. That was good. Of course. The truth is good. What do we have here? Oh, this flat earther thinks NASA's lying to you. Because it is. And this is from Vice from 2 years ago. Put out by
Based
Vice.
on what they're showing us, it seems very fake. When we're being presented with things like the moon landing footage, and you've only got to look at it with a critical eye to see that it's done on a set. Hi, I'm Nathan Oakley, and I'm a flat earther. I run several YouTube channels, I interview people about the subject, and I've been doing it for about the last couple of years. In my last career, I was traveling around the world as an international sales rep. And as I traveled around the world, what I observed on almost every flight was the same thing, which was lots of people staring at the back of their headrests and observing the latest movie, drinking booze, falling asleep, whereas I would actually be at the back of the plane, looking out at the emergency exit window, which had the widest viewing angle, and observing the flat plane below. That being the case, when I came across a Matt Powerland video on YouTube and he uttered the words flat earth, not in ridicule, but in the same context as we're talking about today, it immediately was a eureka moment. I mean, I literally went and woke my wife up and told her that the earth was flat.
Why would NASA lie?
NASA were developed for the sole purpose of lying to us. Their only purpose is to perpetuate the globe lie. Every single story that is told by NASA has the subcontext that we live on a globe. The way they're faking things is with top-of-the-line, absolutely cutting-edge studio techniques like were used in the film Gravity. So they're using trapeze, they're on high wires, in order to fake us for as long as humanly possible. Well, that's a good comparison because the blockbuster movies bolster the NASA fakery. If you're watching Guardians of the Galaxy or Star Trek or Star Wars, the basis of that is that you are on a spinning globe. So the fact that Hollywood perpetuates this meme, this lie, this spinning globe lie, is the over-the-top suspension of disbelief.
5 minutes or so.
They play their cards much more close
behind,
to
I
their chest.
guess.
They always keep it nice and simple. So they're not going to be having Star Wars type battles in space. They're just going to have a zero-G meal. It's much more downplayed. The Illuminati. I don't know a great deal about the Illuminati. It's something that I've come across since finding out the Earth was flat or investigating flat Earth. It would seem that there are certainly families or bloodlines or secret societies that control certain aspects of our life. However, until 1972, we hadn't been up and checked. So to say that a secret society knew and was therefore perpetuating a deception, I would say no. No, I can't prove it. I can only support it with evidence. So to say, do I need to prove it? I would say no, because the starting point is flat. That's what you observe, that's what I observe, and that's what everyone deals with in their day-to-day lives. I've heard every insult under the sun, and I think the reason we get these insults is because we are pre-programmed from birth to ridicule the idea of flat Earth. We're told that it's a notion of Philistines. It's something that we have progressed beyond. So I tend to not overreact to people who are insulting to me about the subject and try and ask them to either, if they're very combative, prove what they believe, which is the globe, or ask them to research flat Earth.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I've never been to the ends of the Earth, so it's a difficult one to give you an answer. Is the moon fake news? No. But does the moon have fake news surrounding it? Yes, absolutely. Of all of the celestial bodies, it's the one that would most indicate sphericity, is that the right word, being spherical, and therefore it's used by people like NASA to prop up the notion that we are living on a sphere also. So it's used to perpetuate fake news. Do I get ridiculed now? No, it doesn't seem to be the case. A couple of years on, it's more like this, people actually wanting to know more information about the subject and doing a bit of research themselves. So I think it seems things have progressed. I don't have an actual explanation for how seasons work. I don't know what the sun is. Same technically goes for the moon. I don't know what the moon is. And further to that, I don't trust any of the maps that they give us. Absolutely, it is fundamental to our state of being, is fundamental to our existence. If we said they are right, the perpetrators of the lie, if you like, are correct, then we are absolutely and totally insignificant. We are a speck of dust in a soup of nothing, expanding into a massive infinite space of nothing.
Yep. Fake mission to Mars ends.
Let's have a look now at the world's first simulated manned spaceflight to Mars. The 6-man crew has now ended 520 days in isolation as the spacecraft's hatch has finally been opened. The all-male crew of 3 Russians, a Frenchman, an Italian, Colombian, and a Chinese person have stayed at the facility since June 2010 to simulate confinement, stress, and fatigue of interplanetary travel. They busied themselves with experiments during the 17-month simulated mission, monitoring brain activity. They completed body scans and collected various samples on board. The program aims to increase understanding of the psychological and physiological effects on astronauts in future explorations of Mars. Each of them will be granted with a prize of money of up to $100,000.
They were in there for 8 months or something like that. I don't know. Oh my God. The moon conspiracy. Was it all fake? This is by ABC News In Depth. Just 4 minutes long.
Now, this might not come as a surprise, but I'm not actually on the moon right now. And depending who you ask, neither was this guy. That's Neil. Some people believe Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin were actually on a film set, perhaps directed by Stanley Kubrick as part of an elaborate NASA plan to fake beating the Russians in the space race.
They're flying, dude.
Here are some of the better-known conspiracy theories about the moon landing.
Fake.
The first theory goes like this. If Neil Armstrong was the first person on the moon, why was there a camera there already? Here's why. The footage of that small step actually came from a camera mounted on the side of the lunar module. And the footage you see of an astronaut stepping down a ladder isn't Armstrong at all. It's actually Buzz Aldrin, filmed by Armstrong, who had another camera mounted to his suit.
Oh, it's all bull.
Another theory is that if this was really shot in outer space, then the pitch black sky rouses suspicion for some people. It was daytime on the moon, and the ground was brightly lit. In those conditions, even here on Earth, a camera's aperture and shutter speed would have to be adjusted to capture the foreground, which means anything faint in the background just disappears.
They've got the flag up now. You can see the stars and stripes on the lunar.
There's no atmosphere on the moon, but again, science comes to the rescue. For a start, there's a rod running along the top of the flag, which allows it to stand perpendicular to the flagpole. And video from the moon shows the flag only moves when it's touched. And because of the lack of air resistance, it takes some time to stop moving. Look, it's true. The shadows in some photographs do appear to be cast at different angles.
Okay, that looks good there, Neil.
And that proves, according to the truthers at least, that there were different sources of light on the surface of the moon, more like what you'd have in a film studio. But the reality is an uneven surface and a low sun can distort the angles of shadows. The non-believers say that proves it's a prop. It's true that in one shot you can see the letter C marked on the surface of a rock.
I say that the rocks are rather slippery.
But it doesn't appear on any of the original NASA negatives, just the reproductions. So the explanation is that the C might be a hair or a rogue fiber that contaminated a reproduction that then went around the
Oh
globe.
my goodness.
Neil, yes, we are getting a TV picture.
There are countless more theories posed by those who just refuse to believe, including a woman from Western Australia who says she saw a Coke bottle rolling across the surface of the moon in the original broadcast. For some reason, the rest of the world just missed it.
I guess you're about the only person around that doesn't have TV coverage.
Wow.
These theories are good for a bit of amusement, but there's a serious side too.
Hey, cover from sight out here.
In an age where conspiracy theories and accusations of fake news have become so normalized,
Fake.
it makes
Fake,
facts
fake,
debatable
fake, fake.
and history
Not facts, fake.
questionable. That's not a giant leap to make.
NASA got people to live on a fake Mars for 8 months. Here's another one on the Mars crap.
Let's do the math. Our surface mission here was supposed to last 31 souls.
Pretty much 8 months through, and we're looking forward to getting back home, seeing family and friends.
This guy is kind of like the real-life Matt Damon character from The Martian.
Hey everybody, this is Josh Ehrlich calling you live.
For 8 whole months, Josh Ehrlich lived in a simulated version of Mars. NASA runs a variety of fake space missions on Earth. These simulations, called analog missions, allow scientists to study what a long space mission would be like for the crew.
It's always been a little bit of a dream of mine. I mean, my dream is to become an astronaut and head to Mars.
An astro actor.
Ehrlich was the biologist on the crew of the High Seas mission, a NASA analog designed to simulate living on Mars. The High Seas mission has happened 5 times so far, always in a remote part of Hawaii. Like Matt Damon's character Mark Watney, Ehrlich's focus was to grow vegetables inside the habitat. The crew could go outside of the habitat, but not without wearing hazmat suits, meaning no fresh air, and the only plant life the crew saw, touched, or ate came from Josh's little garden.
To see and just to watch the crew members eat a vegetable for the first time, like a real vegetable, not something that's dehydrated or freeze-dried. It was a truly worthwhile experience.
Exactly, Brian.
Providing to them.
Not only is it logistically challenging to live inside a geodesic dome for 8 months, even if you're on Earth, it can also do a number on your psychological state. One of the biggest concerns with a long space mission is the impact it has on the crew's mental and emotional well-being. It's one big psychological experiment,
It always is
what's
with
it
NASA.
actually like living in isolation with just 5 other people for 8 months?
2 girls and 4 guys.
Realize,
Oh
man,
boy.
I miss feeling the wind. I miss getting a sunburn.
You just get laid.
I miss jumping into the ocean.
Josh's duty to his crew and to the mission kept him invested in the project. But dedication in itself can't be enough to keep everyone sane and on good terms with each other, right? Conflicts will come up. People will inevitably get on each other's nerves.
Communication, when you all are on the same page, man, you can do anything. If there's something bother you, just say it. A few words can go miles to getting things done, to accomplishing.
3, 2, 1.
Josh says what he learned on this mission can be applied to anyone. These aren't just rules to live by when you're trapped in a dome in Hawaii pretending you're on Mars.
Always keep in the back of your mind that we're all in this together. And that can be spoken both for high seas, but also here on Earth. How we treat our planet, how we interact with each other, how we live with family members and friends. We're all in this together. So let's focus on going forward, not backward.
Oh, now this is freaking. Well, boy, this is sneaky. 25 sneaky lies you were told about space. Oh, but there's lies in here too. So just.
What would you do if I told you that you could be a victim of sneaky space lies? But don't worry, that you could be a victim of. Most of us have been victims to wrong information when it comes to space. Our knowledge of the universe is changing so fast that even the smartest astronomers have to constantly keep up with the new information. It's not easy. So, how many of these space lies do you believe? Well, I'm Mike with List 25, and let's find out with these 25 sneaky lies you were told about space.
Hang on. It's not cooperating. May have to restart this one. Did my internet go down? No. All right, quit blocking me, NASA. Come on. Oh my goodness. Won't cooperate. It's not cooperating. Ah, dear. It's always something. Are we still live? Did the stream go down? I do wonder. Yeah, I'm just having a problem on my end, it looks like. Sorry for that. See if that helps.
What would you do if I told you that you could be a victim of sneaky space?
What would I do if I told? What would you do if I told you? He never said that.
Lies. But don't worry, that you could be a victim of most.
Bear with me. It's one thing after another today. For real. It's been an awful day.
Most of us have been victims to wrong information when it comes to space. Our knowledge of the universe is changing so fast that even the smartest astronomers have to constantly keep up with the new information. It's not easy. So, how many of these space lies do you believe? Well, I'm Mike with List 25, and let's find out with these 25 sneaky lies you were told about space. 25. Astronauts are weightless in orbit. Well, sort of. The only reason you see them floating around in the space shuttle is because the shuttle is actually in free fall with the astronauts inside it. So why don't they smash into the Earth? Simplistically, they're moving too fast laterally, and so they keep missing the ground. That's right, they just keep falling over the horizon. 24. The sun is yellow. It's actually white.
Yeah, now
the reason
white.
it looks yellow most of the time is because of the distortion from our atmosphere. 23. Your mobile phone uses satellites. Usually, no. 99% of communication travels via undersea cables. Only a small portion is bounced off of satellites. 22.
None.
It would be dangerous to fly through an asteroid belt. If you've seen Star Wars, then you know what I'm talking about. The truth, however, is that if you actually did fly through an asteroid belt, you probably wouldn't even notice. The density of asteroids is significantly lower than Hollywood leads us to believe. 21. The Great Wall of China is the only man-made structure visible from space. Nope. The Great Wall isn't actually all that visible. From the ISS, at about 250 miles up, you can see the Great Wall along with numerous other man-made structures, but it's definitely not the most visible imprint of man on our planet. 20. Earth is a perfect sphere. Due to its spin, the Earth actually bulges at the equator. 19. Mercury is the hottest planet. You may be tempted to think that because it's so close to the sun, Mercury must be the hottest planet in the solar system. You'd be wrong, though. Venus's atmosphere ensures that its surface is on average 480 degrees Celsius, while Mercury's surface averages 167 degrees Celsius.
Blah, 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 blah.
18. The sun is a big ball of fire. Nope. There isn't any fire in the sun. Fire requires oxygen, and the sun is composed mostly of helium and hydrogen. In fact, the heat of the sun comes from something called nuclear fusion. The pressure and temperature in the sun's core cause the hydrogen atoms to fuse together into helium atoms. This process gives off the intense heat and light of the sun. 17. The moon has a dark side. The dark side of the moon isn't doused in perpetual blackness, but rather it's simply always facing away from us due to the rotation of both the moon and the Earth. A better name is the far side of the moon. And the only way to see this far side is by actually flying around the moon. 16. Pluto is a planet. As we all know by now, Pluto used to be a planet. Sadly, that's not the case anymore. It's now considered a dwarf planet. Thanks, International Astronomical Union. But why? Beyond Neptune is something called the Kuiper Belt. This belt is basically a massive asteroid belt. While Pluto is one of the biggest objects in this belt, it's not the most massive. 15.
Brian's balls are.
Planet 9. Although it hasn't been found yet, observations regarding the orbits of several outer planets have led to the high probability of there being an actual ninth planet. In all likelihood, it would be quite far away and a good bit bigger than Earth. 14. Black holes are funnels. In movies, they're often portrayed as 2D suckers. In reality, black holes can be thought of as spheres. They're basically really dense stars with insanely strong gravity. 13. In the Middle Ages, people thought the Earth was flat.
Yes.
Almost every scholar of the Middle Ages knew that the Earth was round.
Oh,
this is the reason that people set off sailing west to go east. In fact, the Greeks already knew the Earth was round by as early as 300 BC. 12. Space is cold. Not really. It's borderline impossible to measure a proper temperature in space because, well, there isn't much to measure. A high temperature essentially means that the atoms of a substance are excited. The vacuum of space, however, is significantly lacking in the atom department. So yes, space is basically temperatureless. 11. You would freeze in space. As we just saw, it's not that simple. In fact, it's more likely that you'd overheat. Why? because the heat your body generates won't have anywhere to go. On Earth, you can get rid of the heat, transfer it, by convection, conduction, etc. In space, there isn't much of anything to give your heat to. 10. Your blood would boil in space. Once again, this is quite wrong. While it is true that liquids will boil at much lower temperatures with less pressure, there's less pressure preventing the liquid from turning into a gas, it wouldn't happen to your blood. Why? Because your blood is in a closed system, and the effect of zero pressure wouldn't affect it immediately. Of course, liquids exposed to the environment would boil right away. Saliva, eyes, etc. Keep in mind this doesn't mean that they would be hot. They're simply turning into a gas due to the lower pressure. 9. Your body would explode in space. Once again, no. The human body may bloat a bit, but it wouldn't come apart. Not even close. In 1966, a technician in Houston was testing a spacesuit when he decompressed at 120,000 feet, almost 23 miles or 37 kilometers. He survived the episode and recalls the saliva boiling off his tongue before losing consciousness. Somewhere. 8. Comet tails trail behind the comet. Nope. A comet's tail is influenced by heat and solar wind, not friction or breakup. This means that the tail is always facing away from the sun, regardless of the comet's direction of movement. 7. You can hear explosions in space. You can't hear anything in space because there isn't any medium for the sound to travel through. 6. We can't go super fast because our engines aren't strong enough. Space offers nearly no resistance, so even the weakest engine could eventually accelerate a massive object to incredible speeds. NASA is experimenting with slow and steady ion thrusters. The problem, however, is fuel. To accelerate for so long, you need to keep the engine running on something. Once you hit max speed, though, you could turn off the engine and cruise to the end of the universe. Which brings us to the second problem. Stopping. You would need reverse thrust to slow down, and that could require just as much fuel and time as it took to speed.
If you work in a team, you've got to try Monday.
Speed up. 5. There are fiery explosions in space. Star Wars lied to you. As with the sun, fire requires oxygen. Since there isn't air in space, explosions would look very un-Hollywood. As for rocket engines, they do create fire, but that's because they bring along their own source of oxygen in the tank. 4. Astronauts fly around with jetpacks. Sort of, but nothing like the movies. The jetpacks are intended to be used as backup. Moreover, they don't have enough fuel to be used Hollywood style. 3. Nothing can go faster than light. While this is essentially true, scientists have been showing that quantum mechanics doesn't necessarily follow its own rules all the time. Quantum entanglement and other such phenomenons may lead to the discovery of faster than light travel. This is extremely important, not just for spaceships, but also other domains like computing. 2. NASA spent millions developing a pen that could write in space. This myth is often cited when comparing NASA to the Soviet Space Agency. Basically, people like to point out that the cosmonauts had enough good sense to simply bring pencils with them. The truth, however, is that NASA used pencils too. In fact, NASA never even developed the space pen. It was a private company, the Fisher Pen Company. Later on, both Americans and Soviets began using the new anti-gravity pen. 1. The Earth orbits the Sun. Here's your chance to slap your know-it-all friends in the face with some knowledge. Every object exerts force on every other object, which means that not only does the Sun's gravity affect the Earth's motion, but the Earth's gravity affects the Sun's motion. Technically, both objects orbit around something called the barycenter. For Earth, this point is so close to the core of the Sun that it doesn't make much of a difference. For Jupiter, however, the barycenter is roughly 30,000 miles away from the surface of the Sun. So, in some sense, we're all orbiting around each other. Enjoying our lists? Be sure to click that subscribe button in the bottom right so you don't miss out on new ones every Monday through Friday. Share them with
Maps have been lying to you all your life. Yes, even Google. Yeah. I don't know if it's going to play.
When you think of the world, this is probably the map that comes to mind. It's everywhere. Atlases, school walls, even Google Maps. It's also very, very wrong, and it's been distorting our view of the world for centuries. This is a Mercator projection. It's one of the most common projections used for world maps. This guy, Gerardus Mercator, created it in 1569 to help with ship navigation. The map was revolutionary because it straightened both lines of latitude and longitude, which was great for sailing. All you had to do was draw a line to where you wanted to go on the map and follow your compass. But to make a navigation-friendly map, the projection distorts land masses the closer they are to the poles. That gives us the wrong idea about the relative size and maybe even the importance of some regions. This creates what some map makers call the Greenland problem. This is Greenland on Mercator's map. It's huge. Here, Greenland is bigger than the entire continent of South America. The same thing happens with Alaska. The state looks bigger than the entire country of Mexico. The farther land is from the equator on a Mercator map, the more stretched out it looks. In reality, South America is 8 times the size of Greenland, and Mexico is actually bigger than Alaska. For the same reason, this is what 2,000 miles looks like on a Mercator map, but so is this. It's the same distance. The fault is in the map. This happens because map makers have to rely on mathematical formulas to project the surface of the Earth, a sphere, onto the surface of a map.
No sphere.
Calculus and complex algebra eventually improved map projections, yet the Mercator stubbornly remained a popular general world map. While it made for a great navigation map, it was also being used as a geographic map in classrooms and atlases. The distorted view of Earth's land masses in a Mercator's projection became how people saw the world. Mapmakers and geographers were not happy. Everything started to change in the mid-20th century. There was a world war, and more airplanes were being used than ever before. Editorials published in the New York Times in the 40s called for the Mercator to be discarded and reminded readers the grossness of its errors should not be forgotten. In a series of orthographic maps in 1942 and 43, Fortune magazine declared the Mercator is no map for global war, and it was a dangerous map to use in studying global strategy. An expose on cartography life published around the same time called the Mercator a mental hazard in a war that is plotted on great circles across the land and sea and through the air. Perhaps nowhere was the rejection of Mercator's projection more apparent than with Richard Eads Harrison's illustrations. The architect turned illustrator for Fortune magazine created maps truly fit for a world dominated by flight, offering revolutionary views of the planet as World War II raged. With Harrison's maps, it was clear just how obvious the United States' isolation was, or how many neighbors Europe had. It was at this time that maps were starting to take on a new use: persuasion.
This union of 12 nations became known as the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or more simply, NATO.
Suddenly, maps became a convenient way to show just how threatening Germany's neighbor Czechoslovakia was, when it really wasn't, or how imperative it was to fight communism, or how threatening other countries were to the USSR. A transverse oblique homolographic map does wonders for showing how close and how threatening the USSR really was in this time's atlas map. Eventually, a German historian created what he said was a revolutionary map projection that he marketed as the solution to the Mercator. For Arno Peters, the Mercator represented Western imperialism. His new projection, with a more prominent Africa and South America, was meant to emphasize what he called the Third World. Reactions ranged from cautious amusement to outright hostility. Peters had trashed the cartographic community in writings promoting his map, and his version really wasn't even that original. A Scottish clergyman named James Gall had created virtually the same thing in 1885. Eventually, the American Congress on Surveying and Mapping stepped in and had a resolution. The organization and 6 other cartographic groups urged map publishers, the media, and government agencies to stop using rectangular depictions like the Gall-Peters and Mercator for general purposes. The answer to the Greenland problem was not a new rectangular map, but instead non-rectangular projections like the Mole-Wide or the Eckhart 4.
Imagine that.
The media picked up the resolution. There was a column in the Washington Post, and it even made it to the front page of the Wall Street Journal. Right there. The Gall-Peters hasn't gone away. Boston Public Schools recently said it will now use the Gall-Peters in classrooms to quote-unquote decolonize the curriculum. But it's not like the Gall-Peters is replacing all maps. You can find different types of maps everywhere. The UN logo has an azimuthal projection, and a good Homolo scene is in the background of CBS's evening news broadcast. But if you're really concerned about how to look at the world, you should probably just buy a globe.
They admitted that the UN logo was a map.
Disney
Imagine
Plus,
that.
Hulu, and ESPN Plus team up.
Oh my god,
Oops. Turn that crap off. All right. Now this is part 3 of NASA Lies. 100% proof from NASA, no moon landings. I don't know if we're gonna watch it all, but we'll watch a little bit of it. I couldn't even find part 2 and 1.
Mr. Thrive and Survive, June 11th, 2015. This video is part 3 in the series NASA Lies. This one will really hammer home the point where we started in the last session, where we had an astronaut in the International Space Station tell us that the Orion project would be the first thing that would allow mankind to go to not only the planets, but to the moon. And just in case anybody thought that was a slip of the tongue, let's take a look at this. I'm getting this from the channel Superformance 72, and I'm going to stop and interject things along the way. So let's enjoy this.
Orion is getting ready to launch.
Launch these.
My name is Kelly Smith.
All you got to do is hit the little live thing, and you'll be with us. You don't know how to catch up? You just hit that little live, that little dot by the live, and you'll catch up, SDHL. Of course, you'll miss a little bit, but you'll be caught up.
Smith, and I work on navigation and guidance for Orion. Orion is NASA's next generation spacecraft, built with versatility
and I'm lying about Orion.
It can take astronauts deeper into space than we've ever gone before, to an asteroid or even onto Mars.
Yeah, we're past
For these
the maps.
missions, Orion has to be one tough spacecraft, withstanding high speeds, searing temperatures, and extreme radiation. Before we can send astronauts into space on Orion, we have to test all of its systems. And there's only one way to know if we got it right: fly it in space. For Orion's first flight, no astronauts will be aboard. The spacecraft is loaded with sensors to record and measure all aspects of the flight in every detail. It all begins with launch aboard a Delta IV Heavy rocket.
This data that they're talking about capturing, that's important too. Pay attention to that. There's going to be a part where they say that communications cannot go through the Van Allen belt. And when they recover this thing, it's important for them to retrieve the data recorder, because the first time they're going to do it, it's without humans. And so without that, they won't be able to figure it out. Also notice that when this thing gets over the Indian Ocean, somehow, even with the 40,000 or so satellites all over the Earth, supposedly, they're going to lose contact with this thing.
Yeah. Because they lie. They lie. They love to lie. They live to lie. They get paid to lie. So fake.
As it punches into Earth orbit, Orion will jettison its launch abort system. The abort system is a safety feature designed to pull Orion and its crew out of danger if there were a problem with the rocket during ascent. Orion's journey is just beginning. As the spacecraft and the upper stage begin their first lap around Earth, Mission Control in Houston is monitoring the progress of the flight. Orion's over 100 miles up and going about 17,000 miles per hour. Just as it passes over the Indian Ocean, we lose communication. This is expected. The communications link we have through satellites to Orion is momentarily lost, but Orion continues to receive and process data. Its computers can handle 480 million instructions per second. Imagine you are traveling with Orion as the flight test continues.
I want to interject here that it can do 400 billion calculations per second. The computer that was on the supposed Apollo mission is less than the current day Texas Instruments calculators that college students buy. Keep that in mind.
Hey, Paige. Good to see you.
The upper stage of the rocket fires again. Like the setup for a roller coaster ride, this is the big climb we've been waiting for. We are headed 3,600 miles above Earth, 15 times higher from the planet than the International Space Station. As we get further away from Earth, we'll pass through the Van Allen belts, an area of dangerous radiation. Radiation like this could harm the guidance systems, onboard computers, or other electronics on Orion. Naturally, we have to pass through this danger zone twice, once up and once back. But Orion has protection. Shielding will be put to the test as the vehicle cuts through the waves of radiation.
You know, I can't help it, guys. Do you know how this thing works? This is probably this clear thing here to show a demonstration. This probably cost the taxpayers about $40,000. This little draw-through board, and the crayon he's using to draw on here, the dry erase crayon or whatever it is. That's probably $75 each. The way that works is somebody knows somebody who has a company that builds these things. There's probably 50 or 100 companies in the world that do this, but they want to give it to somebody that's hooked up with somebody at NASA or somewhere else in the government, a senator or whatever. So they go out to you and say, look, give us specifications, a whole bunch of things that are unique to you that other companies don't do. And what we'll do is when we go to bid this job out, we'll make it so specific to you that nobody else will fit the qualifications. And then you end up with this no bid situation. And this is how we ended up paying, if you remember back in the day, $79,000 for a hammer and different things like that.
Sensors aboard will record radiation levels for scientists to study. We must solve these challenges before we send people through this region of space. For this flight, it's...
Wow, he had the volume down like a dummy. Yeah, see, I mean, they've been
time to head home. The upper stage of the rocket triggers separation. Orion's jets fire to turn it into the proper position to re-enter Earth's atmosphere. No matter what happens now, we're coming in. 75 miles above Earth, the spacecraft enters the atmosphere. Things happen quickly. We're now traveling more than 20,000 miles per hour. Air particles pushed out of the way heat up. An envelope of hot plasma surrounds the vehicle as it plummets towards Earth. The plasma reaches temperatures of 4,000 degrees Fahrenheit, almost twice as hot as molten lava. This may be the most dangerous part of the flight. Mission Control is monitoring all the data.
So tell me, if it's supposed to look like that, why the hell didn't I see anything when they splash landed off the coast of Pensacola? You know, the when it got me in trouble when I covered that, and I can't go live on my other channel, my main channel. Yeah, I didn't see anything, nothing. I went outside and saw nothing coming in, you know, and heard nothing too. So Yeah, it's all a show.
From the spacecraft, and then we lose communication again. No data can penetrate the plasma. Orion is on its own. Orion is inside a fireball. Onboard systems ignite jets to keep the ship pointed correctly, so the specially constructed heat shield takes the full brunt of the inferno. This is the largest heat shield of its kind ever made.
Okay, this is going to come up again. He's calling this plasma, which is the atmosphere, and the Van Allen belts are also plasma, and they're already superheated by the sun, which also tells you that the sun's much closer to the Earth than 93 million miles if it's superheating it.
Yep.
And he also, again, is going to mention how the data cannot be transmitted through that, and that's why the onboard computers are necessary to get the data. So these people that are shooting these so many quadrillion particles up supposedly at the moon, they're probably bouncing off the ionosphere or some other part of the Earth's outer system and or the Van Allen belts, and they happen to get 2 or 3 or 1 particle back out of all those quadrillions, and supposedly that's proof of reaching the moon. I'll tell you, man, this is all BS. Can you believe any of it?
That's right.
Orion's computers command the spacecraft to bank like an airplane, keeping a precise path to the landing site. Even though we've slowed from 20,000 miles per hour to about 300 miles per hour, we're still traveling amazingly fast. We must slow down to safely land in the ocean. Luckily, we have parachutes. Specially designed for Orion, the parachutes help us hit the brakes, but not too quickly.
I didn't see any of that. Nothing in the sky. I should have been able to see that at least. Nope. But they sure showed us that Trump flag on that boat that got there quicker than anybody else. That was planted too.
Help us hit the brakes, but not too quickly. One day people will be aboard, so deceleration must happen in stages to keep things comfortable for the crew.
One day.
Sorry about that last part. It was blacked out, I think, where you couldn't hear me. I was talking about the parachute system that supposedly was okay for Apollo. We only had these 3, and this whole concept here and this whole idea is the same. They're not any different in size or probably any kind of difference in weight and things like that. And yet with this, they need all kind of different sets, 3 different sets of parachutes to open. There's 2, and then I think 3, and then another 3 or something like that. How come they didn't need that on Apollo?
So deceleration must happen in stages to keep things comfortable for the crew. The forward bay coverage. Jettisons. 2 drogue chutes deployed and slowly returning spacecraft down to 175 miles per hour.
Wasn't there with Apollo.
Then, the 3 main parachutes open.
This is all Apollo had.
Once fully engaged, this canopy would cover an American football field. It takes parachutes this size and strength to slow our descent to 20 miles per hour, and then splashdown. For this first flight, we won't have astronauts inside, but we still have some very precious cargo. The flight data from this mission is stored inside the Orion spacecraft. While our flight might be over, there is still a lot of work to do. Onboard sensors recorded every detail, from launch to flying in space.
Well, I'm going to stop it there because that's pretty good. As he just said, onboard recording devices gave them everything. They couldn't get transmissions to monitor this. And if you remember the Apollo program, even if you saw the movie Apollo 13, what you had there was they were constantly getting telemetry from the Apollo spacecraft. They never lost it in space, except for when they went behind the moon, supposedly. All right. Now, did you see that little drawing he had? I tried to catch it. Let me see if I can get it again. Doesn't matter. It was a V shape with a circle around it. NASA is nothing but a bunch of, well, NASA was started by a bunch of Nazi scientists, or at least those that came out of the Nazi system. And it's nothing but a bunch of Freemasons in there.
Yep.
And if you don't believe that, go look and see how many astronauts that went to the moon were not Freemasons. If I'm not mistaken, every single one was. And every single astronaut that goes into space that's not a civilian today is a Freemason. And the ones that are civilians,
They don't go into
they
space.
either are Freemasons themselves or they have family members that are, and they're high up. Buzz Aldrin was a 33-degree Freemason. And if you go back and listen to the recordings when he was planting the flags in the studio in the UK, he said, we plant our flags in honor of whatever, something like that. But he said flags. And he took a U.S. flag and a Mason flag and stuck both of those in the supposed moon's surface. And he later took that and donated to somebody. And it's on display now that it was displayed actually on the moon is what it says. But this is all symbolism here. You remember the Masons, they have the compass that comes down over the, do they call it the protractor on that? I don't know what they call it, but it's the same thing. It's a circle. This thing right here, if you get into this has some special symbolism too in the in the world of the occult. And everything about NASA, it has to do with the occult and Freemasonry and all kind of things like that. So anybody that wants to deny that this is a lie, that we went to the moon before, they are telling you blatantly here, we did not go to the moon. They still have to solve it, and they got to send up one without anybody in it because they know it would kill them. And they have to then make sure it wouldn't kill them. And then once they get all the data, maybe they'll send somebody up. But it isn't going to happen. And whether you believe in the Bible or not, there's a scripture in there that is so true. No man hath ascended into the heavens. And, well, NASA just told us that, didn't they? So if they lied about that, and they obviously lie about a whole lot of things because there's all kind of stuff connected to this. How can you believe anything they say about anything?
Can't.
If you end up with people that lie, how much do you trust them?
Yep.
You folks that believe in NASA and the different scientists, you better wake up to the fact that you're being lied to all the time. Not only that, but all these scientists that on the sly will tell reporters and things like that, look, if I come out and tell people the truth with what I know, I'll get fired. I'll lose my funding and things like that. It's all a money racket. Always follow the money. And they've been siphoning off trillions of dollars from the American public when they could have been curing cancer, heart disease, Parkinson's disease, and maybe.
They don't want to cure any of those. So this is this guy's channel right here that we were just listening to. He's got a lot of flat Earth stuff. Man, there was another one I was going to maybe play. But anyway, all right. So here we go with what science removed from Earth. What science removed Earth from center of the solar system, and this is one of his too. Mr. Thrive and Survive.
Hey everyone, Mr. Thrive and Survive. You know, while you're in conversation sometime, you may have an opportunity to have your odd belief system, odd to the general public, be on display. And one of the best things I think you can ask for anybody who believes that the Earth rotates around the sun is simply to say, do you happen to know what experiment science performed to show that the Earth revolved around the sun instead of what they always believed before that the Earth was the center of the universe? Do you happen to know what that experiment was? Do you know what the history was that brought that about? That's the key there. Do you know what the history was that brought that about? Now, you might be surprised to learn, and I'm sure the person you're speaking to is going to be surprised to learn, that absolutely no scientific experiment was done to show that the Earth was not the center of the universe and that it was not moving. Now, let's take a look at a little bit of the history of how all of this started to work here. What we have here is a story of many different people, and believe it or not, a lot of these people didn't necessarily live at the same time, but a lot of these people here overlapped. And you had astronomers and calendar makers and all kind of different people, philosophers, all kind of mixed together here in the early days of science. And sometimes the story goes all the way back to the first century AD with Ptolemy. And we have people like Luigi Lilo, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, or Luigi Lilo, I think is how it is. And he actually did a bunch of astronomical work. And we've all heard about the amazing Copernicus and the principle that we supposedly live by today, or it is the principle that science lives by today. A principle which, by the way, is under big trouble. I just happened to watch the movie The Principle, and I will be talking about that in other videos. But let's stick together with what actually happened in history. You see, around the Middle Ages, the Middle Dark Ages, I guess you could say, they started to notice that the calendars were slipping. In fact, I believe it was by the 14th century, they had determined that there were at least 10 solar days of slippage in the calendar versus what they were observing. And at that time, there was a power struggle, actually. What else is new? But this was more acute way back then. The power struggle was between church and state. Now, there's been times in history where church and state have operated side by side, but generally speaking, it's been a contentious thing, and one wants power over the other. Well, we've had a couple popes back in the 1500s who were particularly worried about this problem of the calendar. And what you may find out is when you dig into the history, and this is where, Copernicus and the principle comes up, the Copernican principle. He supposedly came up with this grand design that changed the calendar and changed the rotation of the bodies, heavenly bodies, so to speak. And what I have found actually in close examination is that Copernicus may have actually had very little influence on the Pope, and he actually may have gone with other people. That all is interesting history, but it's kind of beside the point for what we're talking about here. So the big problem was for you to be able to entertain your guest at a party or an outing is to be able to tell them that they had this problem in the Catholic Church, and indeed all of humanity had this problem, where there was a slippage in the calendar and it was getting worse. And there were several different postulations on how to fix this, but none of them really tended to work too well. In the end, what happened was they discovered that if they made it 365 and a quarter days, that would pretty much keep up with it. And every fourth year, of course, they would have a leap year, and hence the birth of what we call today the Gregorian calendar. Granted, I'm leaving a lot of detail out, but these are the main details you need to know. So under Pope Gregory, we ended up with what is called the Gregorian calendar, named after him. And it pretty much changed a 360-day calendar to 365. And this is also an interesting facet to go down in history at another time. Why the change from 360 to 365? In any case, 365 obviously worked better, but we had an interesting flip-flop going back and forth and up and down with all the different players involved. It was almost like rolling the dice with what were we going to do with what we think the universe is next. Is it the Earth in the center, or is it the sun that is in the center? And then we have variations of that. We had the Earth in the center, and then the sun orbiting 2 or 3 orbits out with planets going around the sun, but the sun ultimately going around a stationary Earth in the center. And so these ideas of what was going on in the sky went back and forth. And believe it or not, it got to the point where the observational data made it so any one of these systems would work. And that's why I don't trust in mathematics to prove something necessarily. The elliptical orbits and how they can be done mathematically, and the precession of different things in the sky and the retrograde motion of the planets can actually be explained with the Earth in the center or the Sun in the center. And it can also be explained with the Earth in the center and the Sun 3 orbits out from the Earth, meaning the Earth would be in the center, and then you would have the Moon, and then Venus, Mercury, the Sun, and then the planets revolving around there, and then you have the other planets after that. So believe it or not, there's 3 different models, and all of the mathematics can be worked for all 3. So this is a classic case where mathematics is used to prove the model instead of the model forcing the mathematics. You see, there was no actual scientific way to tell which one of these was true. From the observation of the Earth, looking up at the luminaries in the sky at night, it was impossible to tell if they were moving around us or we were moving around them. And at this point in history, there was absolutely no science, even remotely possible, to be able to tell which one was correct. So it was just a matter of who was going to win the day, the religious or the political leader at the time. And that would ultimately determine what came down as our final solution. Now, the Catholic Church and the Protestants, in case you didn't know, had some differences during this time period, coincidentally or not coincidentally. And the Catholic Church decided they were going to stick with the Earth as the center, and to ultimately be different, the Protestant Church decided they were going to go with the Sun as the center. Now, I don't know what your beliefs are as far as Catholicism versus Protestantism, but it doesn't matter. The very fact is one chose one over the other, not because of science, but because of differences and hatred for one another. So the bottom line is this. In the Western world, in the English-speaking world in particular, this time period started the great ascent of the shortly after this period began the great ascent of the power of England and the Church of England. And they decided that they were going to be the right one with the heliocentric model. And without science, they began to teach this in the school system. Within 3 generations, there was no more, how should I put this? There was no more memory of the opposite system. And since the powers that be at the time decided to leave out the fact that science had not taught any, one view over the other, this was just accepted as it is today that science must have proven this, but it never did. So the bottom line answer is, if you get into a conversation and you might want to say to someone, hey, can you explain to me what experiment in history, in history, the Earth was always considered to be the center of the universe, and everything revolved around that in the solar system. But pretty much in the 14th century, that was changed to where the Earth was no longer the center of the universe. It was moved out, demoted, so to speak, and the sun was placed at the center of our solar system. And what science was proved to cause that? And you don't have to worry about the person knowing their history, because if they know their history, they know there is no science. But ultimately, they will probably ask you, I'm not sure. What experiment was there that showed this? You can confidently say there was no science behind the decision. There was observational data. Yes, plenty of observational data, but none of it was based on science. And in all cases, all 3 of the ones I explained, mathematics could be used to show that it worked. So that is the first in a series of teaching you how to reply to geocentric questions or to generate them yourself. And we're going to be going down this road for a while, intermixed with some other things as we've always been talking about.
You don't say. All right, here's one on Elon Musk. that I wanted to check out.
Hey, what's up, everyone?
What's going to give us an ad or something? That's cool.
I have not felt so great this morning, as you already know. I would like to thank you all for your well wishes. Last night into this morning, I felt really rough. I'll just put it that way. Chip and the AI Jesus. So we're definitely in some very very prophetic times. Elon Musk has a Neuralink chip. He's been talking about it for a while now, and I've been following the news on it. This is the info on it. The Neuralink chip. It's a brain chip. And it's like a Fitbit in your skull with tiny wires.
No thanks.
That is what it is right there. That's on a fingertip.
Never,
And it's been
ever.
perfected and has worked in pigs. And next they said it's finally ready for humans.
Not me.
They said they claim they're still a ways off from being useful to humans. But they said the computer was measuring brain activity. It measures brain activity. And the beeps that come in are real-time signals. They said that the brain, according to Yahoo News, the brain implant is expected to cure ailments. And they said, who wouldn't want that? Who wouldn't want that? They said it's close to being ready for human testing. It cures ailments. And they said it's next generation brain machine interface. Linking our brains between the brain and computer chips. It'll be a Fitbit for the brain, but for tiny wires. And they already have all these things that are going to monitor your symptoms in real time and relay it to the cloud. And another thing they continuously keep talking about, they can also control your mind with it. They can control these things. That's the next step. Control someone's thoughts, control someone's mind. Society's already way too easily controlled. But they said, it will heal ailments and illnesses, neurological disorders, mental illnesses, mental issues. It will heal those issues. Then they said you'd be considered an outcast to not have it. You would be considered an idiot to not take it. That's what they're doing right now.
I don't want it.
They said that he hopes to have an implant in a patient by the end of this year. Implanted directly in the skull that can interface between the device and a human. They said it'll be as simple as LASIK surgery.
Dean.
And they claimed it will solve autism. He claims that this mini brain chip cures depression and addiction. Humans will no longer be depressed if they use this. It's like a sewing machine device inside the brain. And they said that it would help. The purpose is to provide humans with more highly advanced artificial intelligence technology, connecting humans to computers. But they said it won't solve autism or schizophrenia, but it can cure depression and addiction. Basically, he wants to put computers in your head. So far, this is one of the designs. That'll have a human brain implant ready by the end of the year. It'll be inserted under the skin. A small robot will connect thread-like electrodes to the brain. Once implanted, the chip could connect your brain waves to an app and may be able to help people with neurological conditions. It will directly connect you to the internet. The Neuralink brain chip. And this is what it will look like. That's what it looks like right there. That is actually what it really looks like. And this is what the device would look like inside our brain. Right there, connecting to certain neurological places in the brain. And these are the skill sets that you can have. iPhone control or iPod control and Android control. I haven't seen anything about Android so far, but I assume it would. I don't really care because I don't plan on doing it. Mouse control and keyboard control for this device inside your head. Yeah. There. This is another type of technology. DARPA has developed highly intelligent brain interfaces. Did that leave a mark? Could that be the mark that's left? I don't know. Now, this is one of the microchips they were requiring the workers to wear in some countries. This, I actually found a strip. This is an exact... I wish I'd have saved it. This is an exact thing that I found in our yard. Just like this. I found a thing just like this in our yard at the dog. Maybe it had something to do with some of the beings and some of the things that were messing with us at the time. But moving back to this, that's one of the implant things. Now, I first heard about this from Jacob Israel. An engineer has created an artificial intelligence, or AI Jesus, that makes doomsday prophecies.
It's crazy.
Yes, an artificially intelligent algorithm that has been trained in biblical scripture has been coming up with its own prophecies. The creation is called AI Jesus. It's already spoken about a plague and the end of days. The algorithm was created by engineer and quantum researcher George Davila Durindal. He explained in a blog post, I present to you AI Jesus, an artificial intelligence of my invention, created from the King James Bible and nothing else. This artificial intelligence learned human language from reading the Bible and nothing else, absorbing every word more thoroughly than all the monks and all the monasteries have. The creation they called AI Jesus spoke about a plague, the end of days. He explained what it was. The topics were called the plague, Caesar, and the end of days. However, some of it makes sense and reads like terrifying doomsday prophecies. One section reads, O Lord of hosts, the God of Israel. And they saw the angel of the Lord above, all the brethren which were in the wilderness, and the soldiers of the prophets shall be ashamed of men. And he said to them, Depart ye from him, and see the mouth of the remission of death. See, though, here's the thing. If it starts coming up with this artificial intelligence, for when they change the word, they're going to be punished. If it starts coming up with this artificial intelligent version...
They are changing the word.
...that comes up with its own prophecies, that's false prophecy. That's not even really from the word. See, it's got all these things here. The sea shall be the father of the devils. Things like that. It's got these different things that it's coming up with it on its own. And that's making up its own prophecies. And that's not... No one will really know what the real words of the Bible are if they just do this. It creates its own prophecy. It came up with a verse of its own that it made up. The plague shall be the fathers of in the world. Now, I mean, that it comes up with its own prophecy. So, a lot going on. There's a lot happening right now. There's no telling what's happening, and I have a feeling I know what's going on. But I really wish I had kept that strip of paper. There's no telling what it actually had or what it represented, but there was a strip of magnetic paper that looked just like this that I found in our yard.
Come on.
It wasn't long ago. America was awkward and clumsy. Its machines slipped and slid in a maze of belts and pulleys. It was a nation driven by horse and water power. And then came electric power. As inventors found new ways to use electricity, they were confronted with new problems. Electrical currents behaved in mysterious, unpredictable ways. While electric power was in its infancy, a hunchbacked German immigrant arrived in America.
Hunchback.
A dwarf who stood scarcely more than 4 feet tall, but who cast the shadow of a giant before him. The young immigrant brought with him one important tool, the science of mathematics. He began calculating basic laws of electrical behavior. His shadow stretched out to reach the future. His rock sound theory began to form the foundation of all electrical invention. His mind became a spur to accelerate change, to lighten the burdens of all men.
He died in 1923. '23, 9/23. Yeah.
The German city of Breslau, near the border of Poland. Charles Proteus Steinmetz was born here a century ago, on April 9th, 1865. He was deformed from birth, a third-generation hunchback, extraordinarily inquisitive, perhaps blessed already with the divine discontent which would make him grow to be a giant among men. Breslau, the university, 1882. At Breslau, Steinmetz was driven by forces within him, studying, absorbing, taking more than was given. He was obsessed with theoretical physics, chemistry, economics, medicine, and especially with higher mathematics and the study of what was then a primitive form of electrical engineering. Steinmetz, 24 years old, America.
I am very satisfied to have come here where a reasonable man can live reasonably and succeed. Nobody interferes with your freedom, and one has the entire Sunday for oneself.
The immigrant hunchback searched and failed until he finally found employment with the firm of Eichmeyer and Osterheld, manufacturers of hat-making machinery. Rudolf Eichmeyer, also a German immigrant, he was willing to try the talents of a hunchback dwarf in ill health. After 8 months as a draftsman, Steinmetz began to apply his mathematical knowledge to the improvement of motors, and he was placed in charge of the firm's laboratory. His legacy to all of mankind, the notebook, began to fill with the shorthand of genius. And the genius spilled out onto the pages of Electrical Engineer magazine. There were no wondrous new machines here, no inventions. Instead, there was fundamental knowledge, words and figures, the basis for 1,000 inventions. Steinmetz, perched on a stool like some fantastic bird, had formulated the law of hysteresis, the basic explanation of magnetic behavior. He had made possible the invention of efficient and dependable electric motors. As Steinmetz was developing his law of hysteresis, two rival companies announced a merger, Edison Electric and Thomson Houston. Combined, they formed the General Electric Company. Shortly after, the new company purchased Eichmeyer and Osterheld and obtained a great asset, the monumental curiosity and genius of Charles Proteus Steinmetz.
Right, man.
And so Steinmetz moved to upstate New York, where the Schenectady works of the young electrical company had some 20 buildings and 5,000 employees. Steinmetz, Schenectady. He lived here for 30 years and helped make a little New York village into one of the great electrical manufacturing centers of the world. Steinmetz first took an apartment near his work, where the tree-shaded streets lined with 17th century Dutch homes recalled the memories of the old country. He made friends, and soon a bachelor's circle of dedicated young electrical engineers set up a more elaborate residence. It was natural for his friends to bring their fascinating problems to Steinmetz for discussion and solution. At the General Electric Works, Steinmetz was officially made consulting engineer, a position he held throughout the rest of his life. He was called the Supreme Court, and important new ideas from within his rapidly growing company were sent to be tried against his logic and knowledge. There was the judgment of Steinmetz implicit in nearly every innovation introduced by his company. He was 29 years old. His understanding of the science of mathematics was augmented by a growing knowledge of electrical behavior. He worked far into the night on complex problems, obsessed and absorbed with his calculations, happily curious. In 1894, Steinmetz achieved another great triumph, a staggering achievement in complicated mathematical computation. He devised a formula to measure the forces of alternating current. His achievement was so monumental that others could not understand what he had done. Very few believed that his theory would work. And so, Steinmetz suggested that alternating current be transmitted over the 26-mile power line from Niagara Falls to Buffalo, an unprecedented test to prove his theory. At the same time, a major portion of the young electrical industry was fighting vigorously for the establishment of direct current. Steinmetz and alternating current won out in this first full-scale harnessing of the falls, and the controversy ended. Steinmetz was believed. The line had worked, but it took volumes simply to explain his theory fully, so that others could understand it. The contribution, mathematics which showed the way to the efficient use of electric power. Steinmetz was a prolific writer and inventor. More than 200 patents were taken out in his name. And while he was finding intellectual fulfillment, he was building a full, if strange and legendary life in his community. After he had lived in Schenectady for 6 years, Steinmetz built this house, and alongside it, General Electric constructed for him a 2-story laboratory. Here, a young technician, Joseph Leroy Hayden, helped with experiments, and a warm friendship sprang up. When Hayden married, Steinmetz missed him deeply. The long hours of complete absorption in their work, the mutual curiosity and understanding. So, Steinmetz invited Mr. and Mrs. Hayden to live with him in his large house. Soon after, Steinmetz adopted Joseph Hayden as his legal son. And from that time on, the third-generation hunchback had a healthy and happy family of his own. Steinmetz loved unordinary things too, perhaps because of his deformity. His bizarre collection startled the people of Schenectady, and quickly a number of legends grew about the eccentric electrical wizard. He was fascinated with photography and the things he could capture with a camera.
Yeah, flat water.
With a group of friends, he designed a flying machine. And the remarkable machine was constructed in 1894.
What happened to the Wright brothers?
But it got off the ground only in trick photographs Steinmetz made. But above all, the electrical genius lived to work and to influence the work of others. Union College. He taught here for 10 years. Union conferred upon Steinmetz the degree of Doctor of Philosophy. And Steinmetz conferred upon his students the great beginnings of wisdom. Perhaps the greatness of the man is reflected in the stature of the people who visited and consulted with him. Lord Kelvin, British physicist, famous for his absolute temperature scale. Henry Ford, who had an electrical problem with headlamps for his Model T. Guglielmo Marconi, pioneer of the wireless radio. Professor Albert Einstein, whose theory of relativity Dr. Steinmetz published in a somewhat popular style. Thomas Edison, another electrical genius and contemporary of Steinmetz. Steinmetz could never separate his private life from his work. At his camp on the Mohawk River, he spent many hours studying new electrical problems. And at the camp, began a chain of extraordinary events.
Dr. Steinmetz, come quickly. Something's happened to the camp.
Emil, this is the opportunity of a lifetime. Quick, get me the camera. I want to photograph every detail. Look here, the lightning struck the tree where it divided into two forks. One passed to the ground here. The other must have entered the camp through the extension cord and discharged onto the silvered back of the looking glass. With this glass, we can calculate the electric charge.
And so Steinmetz began research into lightning. Systematic investigation started in 1907 and culminated in 1921 with dramatic experiments. In 1922, man-made lightning was demonstrated to the press and an interested and distinguished guest, Thomas Edison.
Our lightning generator gives us a discharge of 10,000 amperes at over 100,000 volts. This explosive effect of real lightning will help us develop better lightning arresters and insulators that will safeguard buildings and electrical power lines.
Man-made lightning. The man, Charles Proteus Steinmetz. The drama of the lightning experiments introduced the little electrical wizard to the people of America. And the people gave him a title, the Thunderer. The man who made lightning in the laboratory and in the minds of men.
I envy the young men of today, for although the engineer has infinitely more competition, he has infinitely more opportunities. And what is true of electrical engineering is equally true of every other field of human endeavor. If I were to bequeath to every young man one virtue, I would give him the spirit of divine discontent.
October 26, 1923. The electrical wizard of Schenectady is dead. Charles Proteus Steinmetz, 1865, 1923. His legacy? An understanding of magnetics for electric motors. An understanding of alternating current so that power can reach the motors. An understanding of lightning so that we can defend against it and keep the motors running. The mathematical foundation for continuing experiments with greater currents and larger equipment. Calculations which are basic to every student of electricity. Calculations which are used in the design of today's complex power equipment. Charles Proteus Steinmetz extended man's ability to use electricity. And he extended the dignity of man.
Wow. And I think that's about it, folks. I got a couple things here. What do you do? Whoops. What do you do in let's see, if you're a flat earther? How do you find love when you believe the earth is flat? It can be difficult to find a partner when you belong to a tiny minority. Flat earthers are turning to the internet where, as one dating site proved, you never know who to trust. Flat Earth singles. This is new. This is from August 9th. Flat Earth singles, where flat earthers find love. In 2015, Brian Dolan decided not to pay for a digital TV subscription, reasoning that he could find all his entertainment for free online. It was a life-changing moment. He ended up spending a lot of time watching conspiracy videos and kept seeing pop-up videos made by people who believe the earth is flat. I thought it was the stupidest thing ever, said Dolan, who is 39 and lives in Niagara Falls, which we just saw some of. Anyway, but that quickly changed. This common occurrence, someone investigates conspiracy theories on YouTube. They dismiss flat Earth as ridiculous. This is a common occurrence. Okay, they are converted often after watching the Flat Earth Clues videos by community posters by Mark Sargent, poster boys Mark Sargent. Sorry, I'm getting tired, so sorry, it's hard for me to read. The same thing happened to Dolan. Within weeks, he had, as the Flat Earth community puts it, woken up or been flat smacked. Dolan describes himself as socially awkward, and didn't have a girlfriend until his early 20s. Other than that short relationship, a few years, nothing has really stuck. He believes becoming a flat earther has affected his romantic life. Quite honestly, my dating pool has become a dating pond, he said. if if you can't agree on the fundamentals of where you're living, I don't think you have much chance of that much of a future. Flat earthers compare their belief to religion, though you shouldn't hit someone over the head with it. It's so important that you should mention it early to a potential partner. Dolan says he doesn't know any flat earthers in his area, and anyway, he thinks 95% of female flat earthers are in a relationship. Once a friend made and operated a profile for him on a dating site, Plenty of Fish, which mentioned that Dolan was a flat earther. A few people were interested in Dolan, asked asked him to take it down. I'm not good at the game, he says. He's facing an unusual but not unique challenge. How do you find love when you think the Earth is flat? So, good grief, it goes on and on and on. Flat Earth singles is a real thing, I guess. Man, yeah, I'm definitely not reading this whole thing. David Wise. There's David Wise. David Wise and Paige Wendell say they shared belief in flat Earth. Their shared belief in flat Earth has strengthened their relationship. There's old DITRH, whatever TH, dirt. Me and him have the same birthday, July 16th. That's crazy, man. That is funny. Nathan is talking about Nathan Thompson. When Nathan Thompson dated a flat earther, he said it felt like us against the world. Wow. This is in Wired magazine. It's crazy. Wow. If I wasn't so tired, I'd have read the whole thing. I'm sorry. This is in Physics World from July. Fighting Flat Earth Theory. Physicists will find it shocking, but there are plenty of people around the world who genuinely believe the Earth is flat. Rachel Brazil explores why such views are increasingly taking hold and how the physics community should best respond. All right, I'm gonna put both of these in the chat for y'all. Here's the one about the singles. And I'm gonna have to go to bed. I gotta work in the morning, I think. How long have I been on? over 2 hours. Yeah, wow. Yeah, I knew I must have been. All right, there's those two articles. I want to finish reading that one later, so I'm going to save it. And I found those just by putting Flat Earth in and hitting the news. Oh, there's the one about Daredevil who reached the stars. There's Brian had sent me one. This one we might be able to actually look at though without paying. Let's see. Yeah, that's done on Daredevil on what's his name that died? Mad Mike. Mad Mike Hughes poses with one of his steam-powered rockets in 2019. Below, a sequence of photos from the February 22nd, 2020 launch. That's 222. No, and then two more too. That led to his death in the desert near Barstow, California. I first encountered Mad Mike Hughes at a self-taught racketeer. About a year before his death, he was speaking at a Adventures Club of Los Angeles. The then 62-year-old flat earther had already launched himself nearly 2,000 feet in the sky twice in steam-powered rockets that he built himself, and he was planning to do it again. He was trying to go 62 miles this last time, I guess it says. Yeah. Anyway, I'll put that in there too. Y'all can check that out. Oh my, I can barely hold my eyes open at this point, guys. So I'm going to call it a show. I am tired. All right, good people. I'm gonna I think I'm gonna play that song again that I started the thing with because some of y'all weren't even here. That Flat Earth song again. I want to play that. So let me get that cue back up, and then we can say our goodbyes as the song is playing. There we go. Oh dear. All right, now come on now. I only have two windows open. What is going on? This is nuts, man. Nothing's wanting to load. I know what it is. I've got my phone on Wi-Fi. Yep. Now it's trying to load. Mm-hmm. Oh, oops, that's the wrong one. Oh, I went too far. There it is. I got it. Okay. And this is Hello Flat Earth, NASA Lies, Adele cover song by Amber somebody. Come on. Okay. Amber Plaster.
Hello, it's me. You know, indoctrination started while we were still naive. Programming our beliefs. And that inertia is the reason we don't feel the earth spinning. Hello, can you hear me? Did you ever stop to question the confession of gravity as a theory? Funny thing, force alone can be explained with buoyancy and density. The sun is closer than what they've told us, not 90 million miles away. Hello from the inside. I'm here to tell you NASA lies. Never was a space probe, and those planets you've loved so.
Restore. Operation Fishbowl. There was a South Pole.
We're surrounded by walls of ice, and we clearly live inside of a glass door.
Hello.
Hello, how are you? Did you get a chance to join Flat Earth and Globe discussion group to discover all the truth? How the sun, the moon, the stars are all revolving around you. There's no more secret. The earth is stationary, it is fixed, unmovable. Hello from the brighter side. They fooled you with the CGI. Sending rockets into the sea, and they're faking that life ISS feed. No matter how high you go,
No matter how high you get,
horizons rise to our level. Look out from the world's
greatest fiction show. You don't need your globe goggles anymore. Anymore. 120 Bible scriptures.
Support the geocentric design of this earth. Railroads, bridges, lighthouses. Failed corrections, make mistakes. Don't be fooled by bird gyroscopes prove the earth is not a globe. Moonlight star trails allow us to prove we are not the ones on the moon.
And I'm going to drop a link to that in there for you too. Yay. All right, guys. I am beat. It is time for me to go lay down. Good to see you all here. Thank you so much for coming and coming back when I come back. Ooh, God bless you all. And tell me here, tell me out.